Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. My name is Don. I'm a first year general surgery resident. So I just completed intern year, which in Canada we still just call a first year of residency, but essentially it is an internship year where we do a few rotations outside of our specialty as well as a few rotations in our specialty, which in my case is general surgery. I wanted to share my thoughts about this year that has been full of ups and downs and where I've grown so much as a person, as a doctor, and as a student. I had a lot to think about and I've taken away 5 lessons that I think are applicable to my training later on and just my life in general. Of course, I've learned a lot of specific things in terms of surgery and medicine and taking care of patients, but this is not the focus of the video because I don't think that is super interesting to those of you watching, those of you in medical school, or those of you learning something new. So this video has kind of a lot of general concepts that I've applied almost day to day that have helped me push through this year and succeed. And I just hope that this can be interesting to you and hopefully applicable to your own life. So the number one thing that I learned this year is that discipline will take you much farther than motivation will. Both of these things definitely work hand in hand, but I found that motivation kind of comes and goes. So I'm very fortunate to be in a field that I find motivating and that even after a year, I still find it very motivating to take care of patients, and when they are grateful for the care we give them, it really does make my day just to hear a single thank you. So I definitely think there's motivation every day. But at the same time, this motivation does plummet quite easily when if I make a mistake, if I misjudge, if I do things that aren't up to par or where I want to be. I find that it's easy to doubt yourself and that the motivation does fall, and it's sometimes tough to get back on your feet from something like that. But having the discipline to see the bigger picture and work every single day to get towards that goal, I think is a lot more productive. And even when days where I don't feel like operating or when I don't feel like kind of going to work because I know that it might be difficult, the discipline really gets me through that. Another aspect where discipline is very important is self-studying. Now that we don't have any more regular exams and that we're trying to just learn and increase our knowledge base based on what we see in the hospital, it's kind of tough to find the time to read a textbook, although it is still very, very important because it's nice to kind of see what's done practically in the hospital, but it's also extremely important to know what the theoretical base is and what the standard of care is for a certain disease or a certain operation. And so despite not having a lot of time, because this is a very important part of my training, reading a few pages a day of this big textbook is really what's going to get me through the whole thing. Reading a few pages every day is hard, but in the long run, it'll take me much further. So the second point is a common tip among productivity tools and being efficient, and that is, if it takes 5 minutes, do it now. And I found that to be helpful at work and also at home, and I do remind myself of that quite often, although I don't always succeed in motivating myself with this thought. So in the hospital, we are given a lot of responsibilities and tasks. Some are smaller than others, but things like phone calls, writing notes, and ordering medications sometimes takes just a few minutes. And I find that if I just do it right away, if I return that page as soon as I get it, because I have just a minute there, it's way easier to manage and things don't pile up as much. And for those in medical school, there's one other thing that I've been very adamant about in terms of my workflow is just writing everything down. Someone once told me that there's 2 types of residents, those who write everything down and those who F shit up. So even if it's really mundane, if it's a small detail, I just write it down. If it's a small task, I don't trust myself to remember it because there's so much going on, and I just write it down, and I find that it's way more effective than trusting your brain to remember. The next lesson, which I've been really focusing on implementing during work in my intern year, is to keep my body comfortable. To explain that, it's not just about sleeping well, eating well, and kind of having that my body is a temple kind of vibe, which I'm totally on, but it's more about the short term, keeping your body physically well so that your brain can work these long hours day to day. And to explain this, there's several aspects to go with this point. So really basic things like just taking care of your image can really boost your confidence, especially if you're working with people. And if my brain is going to be working hard day and night, I want my body to be in some sort of a homeostasis and have all the basic urges be fulfilled in terms of hunger, thirst, fatigue, and pain. I made a separate video on how to optimize sleep and work when you're tired and kind of going through that. And there's these other small things that may sound weird, but I really do think improve my quality of life at work. And that's getting a nice pair of glasses that are really comfortable to wear all day. My lips get really dry, so I carry some lip balm all the time. And the scrub caps I wear, I find, are just really comfortable, and they really do keep me warm at night. And the last thing to go with this is that I work on my feet basically all day, walking around or standing in the OR. And I find that a good pair of shoes makes a world of difference. And most of the time, you're not running around in the hospital. You're more kind of just walking steadily and standing around. And so I find things that have a really good insole and that have molded insoles. So things like custom orthotics, or what I wear now are Birkenstocks, which are extremely popular for people who work in the hospital. I don't wear the Fire Crocs anymore because they're too warm and a bit too mushy. I have a pair of Birkenstocks that are kind of like these ones here that are at work. And so these mold to your feet. The more you wear them, the more comfortable they get. And these are perfect for standing and for strolling around and for seeing patients at the bedside. I really can't stress this enough, how taking care of my feet has made a huge difference in my level of fatigue at the end of the day. And moving on to the next point, which I think builds on this last point, is that I've, in the past year, had to adjust my definition of balance. And I mean things that you do every day that kind of are part of your routine and that you enjoy doing or need to do. So things like eating well, sleeping well, and exercising. I'm not really going to talk about kind of spending time with friends and keeping in touch with family, having a support system, and taking breaks and vacation, which are obviously super important. And personally, I found those to be kind of easy to manage just because I've molded my life around residency. But it's more the daily things where it's easy to feel guilty when you're on call and you're not eating well, you're eating fast food all the time, you're not sleeping. In a lot of ways, this has to do with kind of being more flexible with your schedule. But at the same time, there is some planning to do in the short term where you're going to have to plan to make up these activities that are important to you. The last point that I want to make that I've learned only in the past few weeks and I find extremely applicable and powerful is finding your flow state. And so for those who don't know, just like I did in a few weeks ago, there's this really nice diagram that shows the level of challenge and the level of skill, and where at some point you can get some anxiety if the challenge is too high and your skill is too low, or you get some boredom because your level of skill is too high compared to the level of challenge. And there's this nice zone in the middle where you get into the flow state. So most people, when they're working, we want to be in that flow state because that's where time goes by fast. That's where things are most enjoyable. However, I'm sure you've heard that residency is challenging, and that's because a lot of things are just a little bit more challenging than the level of skill we have. And the whole point is that our skills have to catch up to the level of challenge. So there's a lot of anxiety kind of almost day to day. And it's really, I think, what makes residency challenging. When you look at this graph here, most of the time I find that it's in that level of anxiety. And I've been trying to be more aware of this and trying to be more pragmatic. And so when I'm feeling somewhat uncomfortable, I'm wondering, is this too challenging? Do I need help from someone else? Or are my skills just not enough? And how do I improve my skills to get to a level where I'm more in a flow state for this particular task? Obviously, in the operating room, the optimal learning experience is being in that flow state where things are challenging enough where you're learning, but your skills are at the level where you're comfortable doing things. And a lot of this depends on the operation, depends on the surgeon and how much they let you do and how much they guide you doing things. And so having kind of that goal of trying to be in a certain flow state has really helped me gauge how much I should be putting in work and how much kind of the task itself might be a bit beyond my level. And it really has helped me objectively see how to improve. All right, everyone, I really hope that this video was interesting and that it wasn't too generic in terms of productivity tips. So if you'd like to see more videos like this, please leave a thumbs up and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.